Hi students, today we are moving on to have a look at Macedon. So prior to this topic, we obviously had a investigation of the conquest and the challenge and the kind of struggle for hegemony in Greece up until kind of 362 and the Battle of Mantinea, okay, which Thebes, although wins, obviously loses its bulwark in Epaminondas, okay, and with the death of Pelopidas, okay, a few years earlier, okay, Thebes has now, really lacks the leadership and the direction of which they once had, and so their hegemony is very much threatened. Sparta at this time, okay, we know is very much weakened after the Battle of Leuctra. The Second Athenian Confederacy is starting to have its own problems, okay, with the clerics, okay, and these colonies that are being set up by Athens across the Aegean. Member states are now starting to have issues with this, and they're starting to have internal revolts within the Second Athenian Confederacy. And so the time, you might say, when we look at the kind of the second half of the 4th century Greece, is ripe for the rise of Macedon. Okay, we have a very weakened Greece. They have a lack of leadership. They have a lack of unity. And so there is great opportunity for Macedon to kind of achieve their own hegemony over Greece. And this would last, quite some time. Before we go and look at the kind of the rise of Macedon, and we go into depth in looking at Philip II, his reforms, how he was able to establish control over Macedon, we first need to gain an understanding of the political, economic, and social features of Macedon at this time. So that's the focus of today's lesson. Is going to be investigating these different aspects to help us give you a bit of an orientation to what Macedon was like. So the key questions you're going to need to be able to answer at the end are: what were the important features of it in regards to social, political, and economic? How does this differ from southern Greece? And when I talk about southern Greece, I'm talking about Athens, Thebes, Sparta. And what was the perception between southern Greeks and those in the northern Aegean up in Macedon? So politically, Macedon is very different to any other Greek state. Even to Sparta, which uses a monarchy, Macedon is distinctly different. It is an absolute monarchy. There is one king, okay? It is an aristocratic society in which there is a court, okay? There's no other formal advisory body like the Gerousia or the Ecclesia, okay? It is very similar to what you might think about a feudal system, that of medieval kind of England at the time. The military assembly, which is the kind of, you might think is the knights, okay, or the court, existed only to kind of acclaim the king, okay? And we see him here, okay, styled as Sid Meier's Civilizations would have it, Philip II of Macedon. And it was purely a formal kind of organization, this military assembly. Upper Macedonian was mostly ruled by local tribal chieftains, okay, who had a loose affiliation with the king. And these upper sections of Macedon are continual problems, throughout the early kind of 4th century, okay, in which Macedon needs to kind of deal with initially before extending its control over the rest of Greece. And this is what Philip does. He unifies Upper and Lower Macedonia, and he is able to offer chieftains land and friendship, and helps to kind of solidify, firstly, his control over Macedonia, okay, by bringing it together. Once he does this, he now has the combined weight of Macedonia to launch conquest of the rest of Greece. How does he do this? Is he creates a group of people, an office called the Royal Pages, of which the chieftains of these local tribes had to send their sons in order to continue to have a relationship with Macedonia. So it was a way of controlling the kind of the court nobles. These chieftains, okay, would be part of the court, and their sons would be part of the royal pages. And as part of the royal pages, they would learn how to train, they would learn military tactics, they would learn how to govern, and this kind of setting them up for the future of their kind of aristocratic kind of career. Politically, there are some issues because marriage is polygamous. Okay, that means there are multiple challenges for the throne. Okay, and this becomes a real issue. There is a number of deaths. There are a number of assassinations. There's a number of infighting to kind of take control of the Macedonian throne, and this leads to instability within the political within the kingship. Due to the kind of political status and the political organization of Macedon, it was regarded as very much un-Greek. For Greeks, independence, autonomy, equality are kind of guiding principles. And so the southern Greeks kind of view the political organization of Macedon as kind of slaves to royal authority. And although we can kind of look at the word kind of slaves, is that really accurate? The peoples are not self-governing. They are overseen by a king who has nobles, court officials, who govern and oversee his land. So these are the various tribal groups, that make up Upper and Lower Macedon, The principal power of the Macedonian kingship, is around these areas here, And Pella was the capital. So the majority of Lower Macedon has always been controlled by the king. These areas up north, there's a mountain range that kind of divides this area here. These become problematic kind of throughout the early 4th century. And especially these groups outside of Macedonia. The Aurelians especially launch raids against Macedon, attempt to kind of destabilize the area, and even establish their kind of own king of Macedon. So it was very difficult early in Philip's reign to kind of establish kind of control over all these aspects of Macedon. Socially, as I mentioned before, it was considered barbaric, because of their location, and strange practices which were distinctly different from those in southern Greeks, They're polygamous, They have a monarchy, and even for Spartans, this was very, very different, Where there's, Gerousia, ephors, which kind of provide the checks and balances on king's power. And they have what is known as uncut wine, Traditionally, in southern Greece, wine is mixed with water in order to dilute it. In Macedon, this is not done. They drink pure, wine. And so, drinking parties become, absolute rages. They always love a good symposia. And, when we go and have a look at Alexander, there are some important pivotal events that happen around the symposium. Even people are killed. They considered themselves Greek. They had similar language, religion, and ethnicity, but the Greeks down south did not fully accept them. And the Macedonians went to considerable lengths, to try to improve their cultural image. And this happens before Philip, but it also happens, Philip makes a considerable effort during his own reign in order to bring leading Greek figures such as Euripides, Aristotle, and give them, a location in Macedon for them to conduct their studies. Aristotle most famously becomes the tutor of Alexander the Great, and they also involve themselves in the Pythian games down south. Society was very much very masculine, strong focus on hunting, killing lions, stags, boars in particular, and the Symposia, as I said, crucial bonding where males got absolutely written off in binge drinking. Very similar to what you might look at Sparta, but different in a way in the fact that it was is kind of more uncontrolled in Macedon. And they were finally kind of included in the Committee of Greek States in 371, at just before the Battle of Leuctra, where they are starting to be involved in Greek states, and the Macedonian king at the time, Agiad, goes down to Sparta to discuss what is to become of the new kind of common peace. Economically, it is fairly much a large agricultural economy. So this is kind of, again, very similar to what you might think of about a kind of feudal society. Unrealized potential, is rich in timber in particular. This becomes important because that is the source of timber becomes pivotal for Thebes' navy during their hegemony. Lower Macedon had very fertile plains, okay, and the acquisition of Mount Pegaeum, okay, transformed Macedonia, okay. This is Mount Pegaeum over here, okay. It's a rich gold mine. This is kind of many city-states, okay, want to try to control this area up here, okay, the Chalcidic, in order to control the gold mines up here. Thebes attempts to do this, okay, when they try to invade Thessaly. Sparta also tries to do this, where they put down Olynthus as a part of the Chalcidic League, and Athens also tries to expand their control into the northern Aegean as well during the Second Enthedian Confederacy by establishing colonies up here in the north. And Worthington, which has become a kind of key source as we move through the topic, states that they possessed an abundant natural resources: gold, copper, iron, lead, fine oak, and timber, with the king owning it all. But it was poor exploitation before Philip meant their true wealth was never, really truly realized. And so this is going to be a focus for Philip, is kind of reforming not only the military, okay, but also the economy as well. So going back and having a look at the political kind of dynasty, okay, this is known as the Agiad Dynasty. Alexander the First, okay, so we're scrolling back to here. Alexander the First, okay, had been a Persian satrap, okay, then turned towards the Greeks, okay, becoming the Protonexkos, okay, or benefactor of the Athenians, okay. He outfitted Themistocles' fleet. Archaeus, okay, as I mentioned before, okay, this process of Hellenization, of trying to, transform themselves into a Greek, state through the use of, the arts, thinkers, great writers. Okay, Archaeus, okay, is the kind of the principal element of this here. So he begins this process, okay, of Hellenization, of making Hellene is Greek, so making it more Greek. Okay, and Philip, okay, who we will be focusing on, okay, took over after a series of assassinations. Okay, so we have, first of all, Archaeus, okay, is murdered in a court plot. Okay, 6 years of anarchy, okay, ensues after this period. Okay, then we have Alexander II down here. He is murdered by his brother-in-law, okay, Ptolemy. In 365, we had Perticas, okay, the other son, murders Ptolemy, okay, becomes king, okay, restores the kind of throne to the Agiad family. And then Perticas dies in battle, okay, against the Aurelians, and then finally Philip takes control, okay, and we have, roughly 30 years here of stability, okay, not what we had, since seen, okay, since the rule of, Perticas II, okay, so Philip brings stability to the Macedonian court and Macedonian kingship. So the political situation, okay, as I mentioned, prior to Philip assuming the throne, Macedon had constantly faced threats of disintegration from Upper Macedon, okay, the Aurelians, the Paeonians, and the Thracians, okay, and also encroachment from Athens up here, okay, so the Aurelians, the Paeonians, okay, all have their eyes on taking control of Upper Macedon, okay, and because it's detached from Pella, it's very easy to take control. Also, you have Athens down here, who is constantly trying to establish colonies up in the Chalcidice, okay, up in this area here and up in Thrace. Ammianus was driven out twice by the strongest of the Aurelian tribal groups, the Dardanelles, okay, in 393 and also in 383. Again, in late in his reign, he suffered a defeat and had to pay tribute to them as well. Okay, so the Aurelians are very much stronger than the Macedonians. Okay, you think about Macedon in the early 4th centuries being relatively weak, unable to defend themselves. Okay, not the powerhouse or the hegemony of which we expect in the later 4th century. So Ammianus is crushed between Bartolus, okay, the king of the Dardanelles, and the city-states of Chalcidic led by Olynthus. Okay, so the Chalcidic League is also threatening them. So we have the Aurelians from the north, the Chalcidic League from the south, okay, both putting pressure on Macedon. And Ammianus had to lend territory to Chalcidice in order to gain the support against Bartolus. And in 371, he voted in favor of recognizing Athenian claim on Amphipolis, okay, this state here, which would give them access to Mount Pegaeum. So Macedon is very willing to kind of, give land and resources to the Chalcidians in order to offer protection. Okay, their army and the infantry had not been very successful in battle. They were not great fighters against the Aurelians, and so it needed the support of the Olynthians, okay, or later the Athenians, in order to kind of establish control over their own territory. Under Alexander and under Perticas, both kings try to stabilize relationships with the Aurelians. Okay, they pay them tax. Okay, Philip II, their younger brother, is sent to the Aurelians as a hostage in order to, as like security for the tax. And under Alexander II, he extended the companions. Okay, the companions were initially just the elite cavalry. He extended these companions to include the infantry. Okay, these were called the Pezahotyroi. Okay, so hotyroi is a companion. Being regarded as a companion of the king is a tool which is used to increase the kind of the zeal and the loyalty of these troops. Okay, and he would also provide them with advanced hoplite training. Okay, the infantry, as I mentioned before, were very much weaker as compared to the Aurelians. Okay, and the Athenians say, you ought to hire mercenaries because your troops are not very strong at all. Although they're invaded by Thebes, okay, who they settled a war between Alexander Ptolemy of Olorus, okay, he's the one who kind of kicks Alexander out of the throne, and of Alexander of Pherae. And in doing so, they removed 30 leading men, okay, as part of the royal pages, okay, to Thebes. And this is when Philip is sent to Thebes. In 367, Alexander is assassinated, and in 365, Perticas, age 18, came to rule, built an alliance with Thebes, supplying them with timber for triremes, okay, and this results in Philip's release. He comes back to Macedon at this time with all of the knowledge about how Thebes runs its society, okay, the military reforms of Thebes, okay, the governance, and so he uses this when he gets into power himself. So Philip's court. How did it function? Okay, very similar to a feudal society, all of the land belonged to the king. Some was owned by the king himself, okay, as royal domains, okay, but most was granted to loyal supporters, okay, or the hotyroi, okay, the companions, as fiefs. So this is land that is ruled over by a hotyroi, a companion, and then they pay a tax back to the king. It's like leasing the land from the king. As companions of the king, the hotyroi enjoyed free access to the king, serving as officials and advisors, okay, as a part of the kind of military court. But again, very much advisory. They didn't have any strong kind of political voice at all. The king is still the supreme kind of authority. And the king was also assisted by the Pleiades, okay, the royal pages, in which the sons of the elite served from kings. So this becomes an important aspect of control. So think about, okay, each portion of land is given to a particular hotyroi. Okay, they then need to pay rent on that land, and in order to secure that kind of land and their loyalty, they give their son to be trained as a part of the royal pages in Pella, and overseen by the king. So this grants them some sense of loyalty. If they don't pay the tax, then obviously it's going to be bad news for the son in Pella. And the core of Macedonian elite society is the Symposia. A male affair, reclined couches, the andron, drinking wine, araxos, okay, this is the unmixed wine, okay, not diluted by water. So it's a sign of barbaric excess from the Greeks' view. And members of the court, okay, fought for the king's kind of favour. And so you can see here a facade of a tomb at Agios, depicting the kind of the Symposia. So what we're likely to see at a, potentially a Macedonian Symposia. Economically, as Macedon expanded, many locals were killed. However, some were absorbed into the empire, becoming employed as farmers, shepherds, artisans, serfs, paying taxes to their lords. Okay, so this is under Philip's rule. Okay, he really tries to extend their control. Okay, either you can join and become Macedonian, or you can be killed. Okay, there's the options for you. Occupying Credides and Amphipolis in 357-56, Philip exploited the resource area of Mount Pegaeum, which soon yielded 1,000 talents of gold and silver ore a year. Okay, a huge amount of wealth which is gained from the conquest of Mount Pegaeum. And Philip adopted the standard Attic weight for the coinage at the head of Apollo, derived from the Chalcidian League status, allowed Macedon to trade freely throughout Greece, providing internationally recognizable coin, which unified all Greek city-states. Okay, so this is already, you can see kind of Philip's planning prior to kind of attempt to kind of, broaden his control over the rest of Greece. And as you can see here, we have the gold stated engraved in fine detail, okay, with Apollo, the son of Zeus. And on the back, we have the charioteer, and the coin celebrates Philip's victory at the Olympic Games. So this celebrates, okay, not only is the coin representative of the economic kind of expansion of Macedon, but it also demonstrates a clear example of the Hellenization of Macedon and the fact that they're now participating in the Olympic Games, and they are now kind of, at this point, okay, they are kind of becoming the hegemon of Greece after the collapse of the Second Athenian Confederacy. Okay, no longer in the fringe, okay, they're regarded as kind of full Greeks. And so his military economy, okay, Philip begins the process of professionalizing the army into a national force. Okay, the economy was put on a constant war footing. It was not going to be a citizen army like those of the Greek citizens. It was going to be a professional army, like that, you might say, of Sparta. Because it is fairly agricultural, okay, those people who are farmers, okay, work in the fields. Those people who are soldiers, okay, will work as professional soldiers and will get paid doing so. So they have a fully professional standing army. It's a rolling economy, okay, plundering of movable property, okay. The more in which they gain through conquest, the more they gain economically. And so what Philip's first attention to do is to conquer the north and the upper Macedon, okay, the Aurelians, the Paeoans, who had obviously been destabilizing Macedonian society and who had been causing troubles in Macedonian society for quite some time. And so his focus is firstmost on establishing kind of control over his own area. And he became archon of different leagues, okay? He means like the head of different leagues. Thessaly, okay, gained the market, okay, tributes of the community as well. Okay, so as leader, okay, they pay him tribute to kind of protect them, to oversee, the control of that kind of area. Okay, so he's very savvy politically in making moves to expand his territory, and that obviously gains him a huge amount of economic revenue, okay, but also politically establishing themselves at the head of a variety of different leagues, he gains the tribute from these leagues as well. And so, as I mentioned before, okay, the Greeks down south, okay, are regarded as distinctly different from those up north, okay, so you can see the fertile plains of Macedon, okay, of Lower Macedon, okay, just here, okay, but you can see there's a great dividing range between Macedon and the rest of Greece. Okay, we have Thebes and Athens and Sparta down here. And so the geographic features of Greece, okay, kept the polis is very much separated. Achaeus, okay, as I mentioned before, began this process of Hellenization, of becoming Greeks, okay, inviting Greek intellectuals to the court. And during Philip's rule, Aristotle, Axamenes, Theopompus, and Python all spent time in Macedon, okay, great thinkers of their time, okay, coming from Athens. And so as I mentioned, socially, okay, it functioned as a court event, okay, the Symposia accompanied by the Hetairoi, okay, the companions, and the pages, the Pleiades. Training, okay, was conducted during peacetime. They formed camaraderie, okay, through the court and through the Symposia. And this, within the kind of the hunt, an intensified competition between the king's companions. All of them wanted to, go on with the king for a hunt, or be seen as the favorable in the king's eyes. And the Symposia was founded on the concept of parrhesia, okay, freedom of speech and egalitarianism. So even as a king, you were regarded as equal amongst the court. And the king was the chief drinker. And assumed the role of fellow drinker under the principle of equality. Okay, and so it evolved, 14 to 30 male guests, 15 to 19 couches. Okay, it was a place for erotic, homosexual relationships, dramatic performances, and also intellectual debate. So a real kind of the full suite, you might say, of Macedonian lifestyle was on display in the Symposia. And this is a screenshot from the film Alexander. The Symposia plays an important role in bringing the people together, but also there are quite a few conflicts that are created because of this process of egalitarianism. The king is sometimes has very there are challenges to his authority because people have quite loose lips when they're drinking a lot, but it's also an important point in bringing people together. Okay, as Alexander and Philip kind of continue to expand their kingdom. And so what I'm going to show you in a second is a variety of different sources. What you need to do as you work through these images, I'm going to be quiet. You need to use your own knowledge, okay, and you need to start to annotate and make notes about what each source shows about Macedonian society. So what does it demonstrate about the economic, political, and social situation? How does it show elements of Hellenization with elements that have been absorbed from other cultures? And what does it show about the differences between what you know about Greece and what you now know about Macedon? Okay, so how can it highlight these differences? So what I recommend that you do is have a look at these sources. You can pause, okay, see what you think, okay, go back to the questions, identifying different elements of Macedonian society, the process of Hellenization, and the differences between Greece and Macedon. So guys, that is the lesson for today. In terms of a question that you could get on this for the HSC, as we move through, okay, you'll notice that when Philip inherits Macedon as king, it is a period of instability. Okay, it's very weak. Okay, it has very kind of little control over their own kind of kingdom. Economically, they had been not necessarily successful in making full use of the resources that had been most close to them. Their military, although it had started to be reformed, is unable to be like a professional fighting force yet. And politically, Philip kind of brings stability and order. Okay, he's able to fend off potential opposition, and he's able to kind of contend for the throne and bring sort of unity to the Macedonian court. And so Philip's transformations for Macedonian society become very significant. Okay, Macedon goes from a very weak, ununified, economically sort of weak nation with no strong military to the hegemon of Greece in a period of 20 years. Okay, so a huge transformation for Macedonian society. In future lessons, what we're going to be looking at is what Philip did in order to transform Macedonian society, a little bit more about the Macedonian kingship, and then how Philip, conquers mainland Greece. So I look forward to discussing that with you in future lessons.